What's up? What's up? Welcome into an overtime special edition of the Orange Zone podcast. We talk the Orange, we talk Syracuse, but there's something big enough this week that warranted its own discussion, and it's Florida State missing out on the college football playoff. They're in the ACC with Syracuse. We have a great relationship with Florida State fans when we are doing our shows related to the SU, FSU football preview, and we appreciate everyone that watches that. So, we're wanting to hear your reaction on this again because you guys give us great feedback. And if you missed it, the Seminoles missed a college football playoff. They were in a Power 5 conference and went undefeated. Quarterback Jordan Travis gets hurt. He can't play, and that's the crux of how this whole thing created one of the more wild Sundays, I think, in CFB playoff history, and how this is going to all change next year with the expanded playoffs. But I'm opening up to Brendan and Sam to ask you, was this the right choice or was this the wrong choice? And maybe that's not even the question.
Right? I'm going to throw it over, hand that Frisbee to Brendan first, because I just want to get a little bit more knowledge, and I know that Brendan has gathered some of the knowledge that led us to this point.
Yeah.
All right, guys. College football playoff, 1 and 2, no-brainers. Michigan, Washington, undefeated Power 5 conference champion.
Right.
Put a pin in that. Everyone's healthy for the most part. For Michigan, you have like a star offensive lineman that's out for the season. For Washington, I think they're actually getting healthier as the season goes along. Number 3, Texas. Not undefeated conference champion, but a conference champion nonetheless in the Big 12.
Right.
Went to Alabama and won, which is one of the best, if not the best, results in all of college football this year, especially since Texas is going to the SEC in 2024. Came down to 4-5. Over the weekend, we all knew Jordan Travis was hurt. The idea was that Florida State had to put up a performance of a lifetime against a Louisville team under Jeff Brom, who's done a fantastic job there in his first year, to have a chance to get in. Because if Alabama beat the then number 1 team in the nation, Georgia, in the SEC championship game, they would be a Power 5 conference champion with 1 loss to another playoff team out of conference, and then perhaps the biggest win of the year in the SEC championship game against a team that hadn't lost in over 2 years, and that loss was to Alabama. With me so far?
Yes.
The criteria for the playoff committee: championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, if it happens, because in college football it doesn't happen as often, right? Comparative outcomes of common opponents, and then what everybody's been talking about lately is the lack of availability of coaches and or players that could affect how they play in the playoff. And that is the question that came up with Florida State, because Jordan Travis is injured. Forget the fact that they have probably one of the best defenses in all of college football. Tommy knows that because of his boy Jared Verse, former UAlbany Great Dane down at Florida State, who tore up the ACC this year.
Nearly caught Sean Tucker a few years ago. I will bring that up every time. But yeah, anyway, every other piece on that team
is great. It's just they're missing the quarterback, and there was a significant drop-off from that. They only beat Louisville, 10-6 in that conference championship game, but the playoff committee had never, up until this point, omitted a undefeated Power 5 conference champion until
this
now.
year.
Was it the right decision? Potentially no, because you are taking away the accomplishments of an entire roster. And Sam has the tweet from Jordan Travis that says that better than everybody.
I do. I wanted to correct you on one thing. FSU beat Louisville 16-6. Just feel like that's important to say.
Thank
but
you.
Either
way, it wasn't college football. I heard Mike Greenberg say this at the start of this week on Get Up. On Sunday, college football became figure skating, were his words, meaning it's become a beauty contest. It always has been, for real. Like, people care about how you win at the college ranks, which sucks. It really does.
And let's hear this tweet, because I do feel like this was important. This was emotional. This was a moment. Jordan Travis, upon finding out this decision, says, devastated, heartbroken, in so much disbelief right now. And this is the part that caused me the most pain. I wish my leg broke earlier in the season so y'all could see this team is much more than the quarterback. I thought results matter. That is so heartbreaking to hear, that he would say something like that, something that would have caused him more pain and more time out just so that everybody else could see what he thought was obvious, that he was just one piece of a much bigger football team. What hurts so much, I think, about this situation for the Florida State football team, for Florida State fans, is that this is something that is so entirely out of their control. I know that it isn't an exact comparison, but in some ways it reminds me of COVID. Like, in the last year of COVID, I was still a lacrosse player, and I remember when they say your season's just canceled or you're just done unexpectedly. Like, it just feels like something that was completely out of their control. They did every possible thing they could. They defied the odds. They still won without Jordan Travis. They did every single thing they possibly could have done right, gave themselves the best chance ever, and still made history by not getting in. It's a really tough situation. And to Brendan's point, I think there is a lot more to it. I do think there are politics here. I do think that there's money involved here. I think there are things that are not so much about the game being involved here. It was a tough decision. I don't know that it was the right one.
My answer is this, and Brendan, I want your answer. I don't want a potentially no or a potentially yes.
I have an answer. I said that because there is that whole moral aspect of, like, these are still 120 kids on that team that would love a chance to play for a championship, and they would have still a better quarterback than the one they had in that ACC championship game because the second stringer had a concussion and would be good foreseeably however many weeks it is from now that those games are played. Your answer, though, Tommy.
End of the day, if that rule is in the guidelines for this committee making the decision, then they made the right decision. Point blank. Do I think do I question the morality of that move? Do I question what that rule stands as with this? Yes. Because it sucks. And I feel for the Florida State players and the fans to not even give them a chance to show that they could maybe still compete. Like, that to me was more the committee basically giving up on them without the quarterback. Not considering, and I'm sure they did consider the defense, but that was them saying no. Like, this is such an impact that it's not going to work. That you don't belong. You're not going to be a top 4 team. When in reality, to not give them the chance to do that, I don't know. That's where I go wrong.
I think it also has implications for the entire ACC as a conference. I think in a way,
I would agree with that.
It's a dig at them, and if anything, it makes me realize that this is the reason why you need an expansion in the college football playoffs. Because how great would it have been this year, especially
so many
to
good
have
teams.
12 teams.
So many good teams.
There were 12 at least legit teams that I would have wanted to watch play.
Yeah.
And Brendan, you second that?
They showed what the 12-team playoff would look like, and if you had the 4 seeds. And then I think Florida State's 5 right now and Georgia's 6, Tommy, is what it came out as. But then you have, like, Oregon would get their shot. And I know they lost to Washington twice in 2 very competitive games. Who wouldn't want to see Oregon in a playoff with this team they have? Tommy, we've been talking all year, off air of this. Missouri Tigers, you were in Como for the longest time. This has been the best team they've had in a decade.
Plus.
You would love to see this Missouri team with those 3 St. Louis kids in a playoff. They'd be playing Oregon to have the right to play Michigan in the quarterfinals is what it would be.
They're playing their best football.
And then you go down to 10-12. Maybe the 12th team isn't great, like, compared to the other ones. But you have Georgia in there again. Like, Georgia, despite the loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game, is still probably one of the top 4 teams.
I know.
think Georgia
People didn't talk about that enough.
No.
I wonder how, like, the Georgia fans feel.
It's a
like,
loss at the
that
wrong
hurt.
time, which is tough because
Right.
you're not a conference champion. And by the committee's rules, their job, and they've always said it is this job, is to pick the 4 best teams. Did they pick the 4 best teams? Yes. 4 best teams at this moment. are the ones that are in there.
Right.
What sucks is that one of the reasons why Florida State isn't one of the 4 best teams is because their starter at the most important position is out.
We're forgetting one piece: strength of schedule.
That is a thing too.
That to me, I think probably was
The biggest thing.
Ended up being the thing that made them say, okay, this is where our difference is. Because Alabama I have here 5th, according to ESPN metrics. Florida State 50.
It's wild that Alabama can still be 5th after they have historically, and I don't remember if this was the case this year, had like the SEC, because it's so top heavy, accounts for those teams having like what you call a cupcake game.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many of those Alabama had. And I mean, they did schedule Texas this year at home, so I give them credit for that.
Right. But I mean, it says it right here. Like that was a big reason, was strength of schedule.
Yeah.
And that is hard to argue with. But Jordan Travis is there and they're in. It's just a bummer. Like that's I think
And it's also just so, you know what it is? It's weird that, and I obviously understand why it needs to happen this way, but it also just makes me think about how weird and strange college football playoffs are in general.
Yeah.
Like just in any other sport, you know what I mean? Like imagine, like you just take lacrosse for instance. Like even if someone in a starting position was hurt or the starting goalie was hurt, if you win the game, you move on. You win the game, you move on. Like results do matter, you know. So it's like weird that at the end of this, it comes down to a committee. I'd also really like to know more about who's on that committee, what relationships they have to the game, and I don't know how they come up with these decisions. It's just a really strange process. I understand that somebody has to do it. It's probably a really hard job, but it is just really kind of odd. It's an odd, strange process, in my opinion.
it's out there for you. It's out there. They should have a audiobook on it or a podcast. Maybe a podcast talking about this whole situation. We'll see. Next year, this isn't an issue. Of course, the 13th team is not going to be happy next year. And the 13th team after that is not going to be happy.
Let's
But
hold it
it's
there.
not
Let's
on
hold
the-
it there.
It's not on the extreme level of when it's top 4.
Yeah.
It's never should have been top 4 in my opinion. Make it 12. Can't wait for it.
Next year.
See you next year.
See you next year.
That's our overtime. FSU. We just needed to get that off our chest.
And to FSU fans, I truly am sorry.
Yeah. Feel for y'all. All right. We're out of here.
See y'all.
Tommy Sladak, Samantha Cross, and Brendan Hodges. We'll see you later. Peace.